Hello everybody, welcome back to 40 Days with Dietrich. Our reading today is taken from A Testament to Freedom. So the compilation of Dietrich's writings through letters or sermons or books or lectures or things like that. The title given to our excerpt is Fueling Evil. Fueling Evil. Dietrich writes, "The only way to overcome evil is to let it run itself to a standstill, because it does not find the resistance it is looking for. Resistance merely creates further evil and adds fuel for the flames. But when evil meets no opposition and encounters no obstacle, but only patient endurance, its sting is drawn, and at last it meets an opponent which is more than its match. Of course, this can only happen when the last ounce of resistance is abandoned, and the renunciation of revenge is complete. The evil cannot find its mark, it can breed no further evil, and is left barren." Couple things about this. I would be interested to know, and I don't have Testament to Freedom, I want to pick that up. It'd be interesting to know when and where Bonhoeffer wrote that. One of the things that Bonhoeffer is known for is being a part of a plot to assassinate Adolf Hitler. But Bonhoeffer, and that's an interesting point of discussion among scholars and people who like to read Bonhoeffer, because Bonhoeffer was also a devout pacifist and fully believed in the way of nonviolence, and as the way of nonviolence as the way that we address the evils of the world. And that's kind of really what he's talking about here. So I would be interested to know what year he wrote this. So if this was one of his earlier writings, before he got involved with the resistance movement and the plot, or if this was later on. But one of the things that he's hearkening to here is the Sermon on the Mount. For Bonhoeffer, the Sermon on the Mount was hugely important. And a lot of what he talks about in discipleship is rooted in Christ's Sermon on the Mount and how that needs to be the way forward for which Christians live. That we need to live out the Sermon on the Mount. If we're asking what does Christ require of us, well, you read the Sermon on the Mount because it lays out what discipleship and what the Christian faith should look like. And one of the things that you see in the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus talking about turn the other cheek, and if somebody asks you to go 1 mile, then go a second mile, and give without expecting anything in return, and all this kind of stuff. And in the context of Jesus' day, that was about Jewish people responding to the oppression of the Roman soldiers who could slap them around or who could require a Jewish person to carry their load for 1 mile. And so what Jesus is doing is saying, well, you undercut that way of oppression and the way of evil by the way of service and the way of love. We could go further into that. It's not just about being docile or being a doormat or anything like that. There's actually this radical place of bravery, which is rooted not in a squashing of evil, but a loving of evil. And so this is what Bonhoeffer is really trying to tease out here, that resistance to evil, overcoming evil by evil, all that that does is legitimize the way of evil to get what you want, or as the way to go forward. And that's not what Christians are called to do. Christians are not to highlight the way of evil. We are always to highlight the way of love, because that is the way of Christ. And so then the challenge is how do we respond to evil rooted in the love of God, rooted in the desire not to overtake, not to overthrow, but to overcome with love. How do we do that? Now, Bonhoeffer says, of course, this can only happen when the last ounce of resistance is abandoned and the renunciation of revenge is complete. So where we begin is trying to temper that call to just give them their comeuppance. That call of revenge, that is not the way of Christ, Bonhoeffer says. And so what we need to do is to work to silence that call within ourselves. And when we can silence that call within ourselves, we can be sure then that we are going forward in the way of love. And that has a radical transformation. And I think that there is something that we need to recognize there, that this way of love is transformative. Evil cannot find its mark because it has nothing to interact with. It can breed no further evil, and so it is left barren. And so perhaps in today's world or in our lives, we need to remember the radicalness of this call to love, particularly in the face of the evils that even we might encounter today. God bless you all as you go through your journey of Lent, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.